and I hope we will delve into new trends, latest trends that shapes the field of phonetic studies and teaching pronunciation. I'm delighted to be joined in opening this conference by our Dean, Professor, Doctor of Pedagogical Sciences, Dean of the Faculty of Linguistics. Zoe Korneva, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Larissa Ivana. Good morning, ladies, gentlemen, our honored guests. On behalf of the Faculty of Linguistics of Igor Sikorsky Kyiv Polytechnic Institute, I would like to declare that the 7th International Roundtable Current Trends in Phonetic Studies is now open. As we open this roundtable, it gives us a great pleasure to welcome you all. In particular, I would like to express my gratitude and warm welcoming to our plenary and featured speakers, as well as the presenters, especially those who are coming from overseas. We would also like to express our heartfelt thanks to our dear Professor Alla Kalyta, being the main mastermind of this event. Our thanks and appreciations also go to Professor Larissa Ivana, whose support and contribution are important not only in making this roundtable happen, but also in helping our faculty to become a vehicle for positive change in phonetic studies at our university and beyond. Now let me say a few words about the theme of the conference, Current Trends in Phonetic Studies. Phonetics is not just great because we have phonetic giants like Professor Kalyta in our midst, but also because phonetics is a fantastic interdisciplinary discipline, sorry for my repetition, that confronts us with many tantalizing scientific questions. But it also allows to participate and contribute to many aspects of life. Phonetics is about the speech signal, the spoken language and speech communication. It is about phonemes and prosody. It is about speaking and listening. It's about mental storage and retrieval. It is about speech acquisition and speech pathology. It is about speech technology and speech databases. It is about languages of the world and dialects. It is about everything else that phoneticians are good at, like laboratory phonology, evaluating cochlear implants, or designing web avatars. Because phonetics is so highly interdisciplinary, phoneticians work in many different fields like linguistics, psychology, pedagogy, history, acoustics, signal processing, artificial intelligence, computer science, maths and cognition, and probably several more. But despite the vast strides made in the field of phonetics, challenges persist. Dialectal variations, speaker-specific nuisances, and dynamic nature of language pose ongoing obstacles. Furthermore, as technology continues to evolve, phoneticians face the task of adapting their methodologies to incorporate new tools and techniques. Phonetics actually stands as a gateway to understanding the intricate world of human speech sounds. From the physical articulation of sounds to their acoustic transmission and cognitive interpretation, phonetics plays a crucial role in unraveling certainty of language. As technology advances and as one's understanding deepens, the study of phonetics enriches one's global linguistic knowledge. Today, I urge you to make the most of this roundtable. Use the connections you forge here to cultivate even more closer, more rewarding collaborations in the weeks, months, and years to come. I'm confident that this event will be a success, and I really look forward to hearing the great discussions that will take place over the next few hours. Good luck to all of us.
Thank you so much for this high appreciation of phonetics and its intricate world. Thank you so much, Zaya Mikhailovna. And
My pleasure.
yes, thank you. Giving the floor of the welcoming word to the head of our School of Phonetics in Kyiv, Professor Kalyta Allandrina. Allandrina, you're welcome.
Our dean told us everything about phonetics, so I have very little to add. Okay, dear distinguished guests, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to welcome you to this to our seventh roundtable annual conference on business and its problems, on phonetics and its problems. I'm sorry. I'm very grateful to you all for taking a time off from your busy schedule to attend this important conference for us. It is also an honor for us to welcome professors from Italy, India, and Great Britain, as well as the representatives from our partner universities to the conference which we are having today. To my knowledge, this is the conference where you can meet colleagues from your own specialty area. That is why I'm so pleased to see so many colleagues, professors, friends, all in one place. I'm especially honored to welcome you here to the Kyiv School of Phonetics, which started its work, or it was founded in 2017. A set of problems studied within the scope of speech energetic theory by the representatives of our school embraces a very current and broad spectrum of topics, such as energetics of written and oral speech, manifestation, energetics of communicants, psychophysiological processes of speaking and thinking and acting activities, segmental and suprasegmental means interplay. Then we also pay great attention to text and discourse intonation, the analysis of text and discourse. Segmental and the suprasegmental means interplay, interaction of intonation of speech and music. This is a very interesting part of our work. Prosodic organization of speech of different personalities. That's also rather interesting aspect. Then we pay great attention to oral speech by Ukrainians. That is interference and of the Ukrainian sound system into the English one. Study intonation and manipulative potential, which is also important, and means subliminal effect on the recipient. The role of phonosemantics and phonostylistic means in realizing the utterance meaning, and so on and so forth. I can speak more about this, but well, it's high time to start the discussion already. The only thing which I want to add that there's the school developed a comprehensive methodology of interdisciplinary experimental phonetic studies, with the use of system matrices for registration of primary data obtained as a result of auditory and acoustic instrumental analysis, served as a starting point of speech energetic experimental studies. So I won't take much time speaking about the research. They are practically, I have already practically enumerated them all. In my opinion, it is the right time now to reflect on these questions. I hope that your strong support and active participation will make the conference interesting, fruitful, effective, and successful. So enjoy the participation in the conference. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you, Alla Andreevna. Yes, you have already outlined the scope of our school research, and so we can, yes, dwell into while discussing. Allow me also to welcome to the greeting word co-organizers of this conference. So this is a joint conference organized by 3 departments. So I kindly ask the heads of the departments to welcome our participants. Жанна Володимирівна, the head of the Department of Theory, Practice and Translation of French. You're welcome.
Bonjour à tous. Рада вітати усіх вас, колеги, на круглому столі. Рада ще й тому, що ми нещодавно приєднались, дякую Алі Андріївні, яка нас активно долучила до досліджень саме фонетичного напряму, тому що ми останнім часом займалися трошки іншими дослідженнями. Але ми завжди раді вітати і раді бути присутніми саме на таких закладах, тому що дає змогу нам і науковцям розширювати не лише наші знання, а розширювати наші дослідження. І ми останнім часом усе частіше звертаємося саме до фонетичних якихось ознак у наших дослідженнях. Вважаю, що це ще й пов'язано з нашими емоційними станами, в якому ми зараз перебуваємо всі. Дуже цікаво навіть сьогодні, відповідно до тем, які представлені будуть на сьогоднішній конференції, дуже цікаво дізнатися, дійсно, з чого це походить, на що це впливає і як це тлумачити. Я ще раз дякую за те, що колеги з'єднують нас іще один раз на факультеті лінгвістики, доєднуючи всі кафедри, всі наукові течії, спрямовуючи в такий мультифункціональні дослідження, якими займається і саме ваша школа. Рада вітати учасників, бажаю гарного спілкування, обміну думками і сподіваюся, що воно буде таким натхненним і полезним, вибачте. Корисним, да, дякую. Корисним для усіх нас і для нашого подальшого життя. Наснаги всім, всього найкращого. Дякую.
Дякуємо, Жанна Володимирівна. Thank you so much. Yes, and the floor is given to Associate Professor Olena Alazebna, the head of the Department of Theory, Practice and Translation of German. You're welcome.
Шановні гості, шановні колеги, шановні друзі, щиро вітаю вас із відкриттям круглого столу «Сучасні тенденції фонетичних досліджень». Взагалі, проведення подібних заходів спільними зусиллями кафедр факультету лінгвістики є такою хорошою традицією, яка, безумовно, триватиме і далі. Тому що це вже в нас 7-й круглий стіл, так, з міжнародною участю. Глибоко переконана, що фахові доповіді, дискусії, нові ідеї, концепції, погляди сприятимуть формуванню й утвердженню, вдосконаленню наукової думки, виробленню нових концептуальних підходів в нашій філологічній справі. Впевнена, що цікаві та інформативні доповіді заохочуватимуть до жвавого наукового спілкування і поглиблення досліджень в нашій справі. Бажаю всім приємного, результативного наукового спілкування, натхненної, плідної роботи, творчих успіхів, звісно, перемоги і перемог. З надзвичайною гордістю і повагою ми ставимося до вас, друзі, тому що попри отакі буремні часи для нашої країни, попри тривоги, такі загрози, ми всі є відданими науковому пошуку. Ми проводимо наукові заходи спільними зусиллями, проводимо наукові дослідження. І, звісно, це є такою запорукою якісної наукової, а також плідної подальшої практичної діяльності. Тому всім гарного настрою, приємного наукового спілкування і всього найкращого. Дякую.
And well, inspired by these welcoming words, let us seize the moment and get into the, first of all, plenary session. And we welcome to open plenary session. We welcome Olga Ilchenko, Doctor of Philology, Professor, Head of Foreign Languages Department, the Center of Scientific Research in Foreign Language Teaching, National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine, with the topic on improving pronunciation in academic English class with a practical guide. Olga Mikhailivna, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alessandro. Dear colleagues, so I'm thrilled and honored to be here today and to have the opportunity to speak with such a distinguished audience. So before we dive in, I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me, and also I'm just thrilled with their dedication to phonetics. Their dedication to phonetics is truly inspiring. That's all I can say right now. All right, and let me share this my screen a bit. Yeah, like this.
Okay,
so let's
perfect.
talk about
Yes,
pronunciation. Yeah, can you see it? Yeah, right.
Yes,
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much. So let's talk about pronunciation in English for academic purposes, or EAP for short. So we all know it's really important to be understood clearly, right? But pronunciation can sometimes get pushed aside in our classes, and yet it's the backbone of any language. So there is no doubt that pronunciation is an integral part of language per se, and language teaching in particular. For example, in recent book by Kuiper Allen, An Introduction to English Language, Word, Sound, and Sentence, we have sound in the title, sandwich in between word and sentence, so which really proves the importance of phonetics, sound systems, you name it. Here is the thing that research shows that phonetic interference is a complex cognitive, discursive, and cultural communicative phenomenon. So when someone's from another language background, their native language habits can sometimes influence how they pronounce English sounds. And this can lead to a bit of an accent and sometimes make it hard for others to understand. Well, think about it. Clear communication is key, especially in academic settings like research collaborations. And if someone can't understand what you're saying because of your accent, it can lead to misunderstandings and frustration. This is suboptimal, to put it mildly, when you are trying to work together on a project. Now, some experts like Stephen Krashen argue that a native-like accent may be attainable despite ingrained phonetic errors. However, a perfect accent isn't always necessary for good communication. But even with some accent, clear communication can definitely help avoid those communication breakdowns. So what can we do? Here at the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine, we've been teaching English to PhD students for over 20 years, maybe more, and we've noticed some common pronunciation challenges. We've put together a list of words that students often mispronounce, and we've also developed some strategies to help them overcome these challenges. So let's jump right in and take a look at some cases from nearly 400 word list. Trouble word list, I would say, we've complied over the years. Let's start with word stress. So it's critical for spotting negation in the first place. Like, In this example, the quote from the Pirates of the Caribbean: "The only rules that really matter are these: what a man can do and what a man can't do." Here we stress can't, the negation, and it's kind of typical context. And when we teach our students to easily discern negation and other cases, so when we stress can't, that means that negation is always stressed, as opposed to non-stressed can, can't, or can't, for that matter, in British English. Yeah, here is more. Here are other examples of cases where stress really matters a lot. Only 2 cases exist actually in English when we have no change of word stress, be it verb or noun. For example, comment to comment, supplement to supplement, same stress. In other cases, stress does matter, like dispute to dispute, document to document, estimate to estimate, decrease to decrease, project to project, progress to progress. And here you have the list of such words. Let's proceed. So, pronouncing names comes with its own set of challenges, like IEEE, well-known Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers organization, world-renowned. So IEEE is pronounced like this. When you have 3 letters coming one after another in a row, it's the same. They are the same. So we pronounce it like this: triple E, triple A, triple whatever, IEEE. And we have another word, template, here, also frequently mispronounced word, template. Then we have the word Adobe, which stands to be mispronounced a lot. Such words as Cambridge, David, Nobel, it should be Nobel Prize, not the other way around. Like Thames, we have TH, but it's T, Thames. Sherlock Holmes, very frequently mispronounced combination of name and first name and last name. Sherlock and Holmes, it should be like this, not in the other way around. Daniel Kahneman, so well-known economist, psychologist, the Nobel Prize winner. His last name is also a bit tricky. Then we have Sean Connery. We have Umberto Eco. We have Robert Oppenheimer. We have Albert Einstein. We have Niagara Falls. We have Connecticut. We have Leicester. We have Worcestershire. We have Albania. We have Croatia. We have Cyprus, Czech Republic, the Netherlands, Nova Scotia, Malta, Lincoln, Isaac Newton, Richard Feynman, Monaco, Florida, Illinois, Arkansas, Tucson, just to name a few. We have Baltic, yeah, of course. And we have also recent additions like Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos. Yeah, in one of the interviews, Jeff Bezos said that many people do mispronounce my name, and he said, well, it should be pronounced like this, Jeff Bezos. So this right from his mouth. Now, let's revisit a famous quote by the brilliant playwright Bernard Shaw. "Simply phonetics, the science of speech. That's my profession, also my hobby. Happy is the man who can make a living by his hobby. You can spot an Irishman or a Yorkshire man by his brogue. I can place any accent within 6 miles. I can place a man within 2 miles in London, sometimes within 2 streets." So here come more words, very frequently mispronounced. So first word is content. Well, we know how it is pronounced in Ukrainian, and it's unfortunately, sadly, it's not true, because content means satisfied. Content is the essence, what we have. So we have the word extraordinary. Extraordinary also frequently mispronounced because of interference of our native language. We have the word colleague, we have the word word, and we have the word world, also mispronounced due to frequent repetition of зробили це в Word чи не в Word. In fact, it should be word, not like this, like the one that I just gave example of. So Strange as it may seem, but the words questions and answers, or answers for that matter, are also frequently mispronounced because, so in English we don't have this sound shchi, we have it in Ukrainian shchi, yes, right? But it should be like sichi, not shi like in Russian. So sichi, question, that's the correct option. And again, answer, students tend to mispronounce it and add the W sound, which is not, that doesn't belong in pronunciation here. Again, simple words, but strange as it may seem. He says, she says. So to say, but says. It's also frequently mispronounced pair of words. So we have such a tricky game, a game of, well, guess which words are not present in the words that you see. Like there is no famous in the word infamous. There's no Kate in the word certificate, and there's no green in the word Greenwich, and there is no ham in the word Buckingham. Another other words that presents difficulties are examine and determine. So they are so frequently mispronounced that I just can guess that when the new groups come in for our studies, the two words that they would definitely mispronounce are these two guys, examine and determine. So, and we just tend to present them in meaningful combinations in sentences like these, like data from 27 experimental studies were examined to determine societal norms. Again, and a, so frequently mispronounced and mixed up are the words like national, natural, and nation, nature, ancient. The word stereotype, an easy one, still a tricky one. The word experiment, both in American and British English, the first letter pronounced as E, experiment. Elite, but expert, expertise, yeah. Now we have such words as human versus humane, moral versus morale, rational versus rationale. And for that matter, we've found good resources online, like this one from the New York Times. This article has an audio file, accompanying audio file. It is that is read by the author himself, by David Brooks. It's not an AI-generated voice or anything like that. It's the author's voice, and the New York Times is a good resource since it provides not just a tape script, an article per se, but the recording as well, which is really helpful, like this article, David Brooks on staying humane in inhumane times, humane in inhumane, yeah. More interesting words they're frequently mispronounced. Well, again, it's all due to interference, language interference, like letter K in words like mechanics, mechanism, technology, high tech, chemistry, chemical, polytechnic. By the way, the word charisma or riz. Interestingly, this word riz was chosen the Oxford Word of the Year 2023, alongside another word, authentic, which is also frequently mispronounced because of this AU combination, authentic, author, co-author, well, hypothesis, another word, a tricky one in terms of pronunciation. Hypothesis, methodology, TH, like this sound is also a bit tricky, a bit. Then we have the words like unique, technique, and a quotation from the recent Oppenheimer movie. What do you know about quantum mechanics? So quantum and mechanics, a good example of practice. Procedure, paradigm shift, and other cases that are to be taken into account. And a number of words here. We'll have a whole list of them that we practice in our classes in small chunks, in portions. And they are all useful, frequently used, and important words. Oh, like type, AI, Delphi. And by the way, here we have Delphi or Delphi methods. Delphi, it's American English, and Delphi, it's British English, which brings us to the next slide that deals with words that really show the difference between British and American pronunciation in terms of word stress, in terms of pronouncing sounds, because it's really there will be no debate about which one is correct, this or that. They can be both correct because of British and American variants, like innovative British English or innovative American English, innovative. And we have this flap T here, innovative. Qualitative or qualitative, same are true, only British and American variants, all that counts. Sample versus sample. Privacy, so advertisement, advertisement, iron, also we have wire, spherical or spherical, chimera or chimera, yacht, yacht, Xerox or Xerox, vitamin or vitamin, agile, agile, template, template, morale, again, we have morale, autonomous, autonomous, omniscient, omniscient, worry, very. Here we have the diphthong, very and very in American English. Yeah. And this brings us to the question, what works best? So here are some tips, tricks, and tools for improving English pronunciation, and some resources that turn out to be quite efficient. So first of all, mix it all up. Don't get stuck doing the same old drills. Focus on mastering small chunks of words, maybe 2 or 20 at a time, to avoid overwhelm. And you can start with phonetic drills like those by Baker and Goldstein, the well-known Sheep or Sheep book. And pronunciation apps also great. But don't forget the fun stuff, like extras from movies, from songs, reading and listening activities, and for resources we can of course check such places online as the New York Times, Youglish, especially useful for pronouncing names. Youglish, any name you can find on Youglish, the way it is pronounced in British English, in American English, in Australian English, and in other variations of English. So of course we have classics, which is Carolyn Graham Jazz Chants. For academic English, the engines of our ingenuity is a really good resource, because all the texts there somehow deal with science and technology. Stanford University class takeaways, again, very short takeaways, 5-minute talks, accompanied by a tape script and by the recording by the authors, by those who contributed those class takeaways. They mostly deal with soft skills, which makes them applicable in any classroom, regardless of specialty or major. So, and again, the Beatles are music, and the Beatles, as a representative, famous group, are always a safe bet. Speaking of which, their recent hit, Now and Then, is not just catchy, it's also beautifully pronounced. And interestingly, the Beatles surprised fans in 2023 with the release of Now and Then, a song John Lennon started in the 1970s. And thanks to modern audio technology, Lennon's original vocals were used to create a completed version featuring contributions from surviving members, Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr, along with elements of George Harrison's guitar work. This lost track became an instant hit, debuting at #1 in both the UK singles chart and the US Billboard digital song sales chart. So released decades after the band's breakup, Now and Then was seen by many as a final chapter in the Beatles' incredible musical journey. And it really was listening and worth enjoying. So makes sense it topped the charts, right? And finally, don't underestimate such thing as reading aloud. It's also a great first step for anyone preparing to present research to a larger audience, like a conference, you name it. So the bottom line, sharpening your pronunciation helps you speak, listen, and understand better all at the same time. It's an investment worth making from day one. So let's work together to make clear communication a priority in our classrooms. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Olga Mikhailovna. Really impressed since you have highlighted the importance of teaching pronunciation, and you have summarized all those issues which kind of occur in our mind, in our ear, those mispronunciation we often hear from our students. And thank you so much for those tools you have given to us kind of to unlock this way to educating our students. And I'm very glad that our students are present so they can pay attention. Dear guests, participants, any questions? Do you have any questions? Well, this summary will be in a form of a video, of course, you can watch again. And there'll be a book of abstracts. And Nataliia Burka has a question. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you for this comprehensive report, yes, on these mistakes that students typically make in during their classes. There's just one thing, probably a remark, which has always mystified me. It's why students have always made this mistake. They pronounced rhetorical instead of rhetorical. And so I was always asking, you know, just why this happens. And eventually, I mean, this year they were able to provide some clear answers. So they said that probably that's because they see this RH, and somehow some sort of metathesis probably works. So they psychologically, I mean, pronounce it this way. Or probably because of rhythm, they are used to this RH and then TH and somehow make these connections. So it's also interesting, probably, yes, kind of perspective, this research of why this happens. I mean, what are these psychological issues that actually make them, yes?
Yeah, it's the same with rhetoric, with terms, with Teresa. Same case. So it's not the single case, they are bound. Thank you. Thank you so much for your remarks. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, the native language interferes with the foreign language.
Right.
Any other remarks, questions? I just want to add that Olga Mikhailovna has published her textbook on teaching academic English. Pronunciation is included in the chapter. Well, in the book as a chapter, so you're welcome. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you,
I just added the revised list and the well, another link to this book and other teaching resources in case someone might be interested. Thank you so much.
Absolutely Thank you. Useful and necessary. Thank you so much. So yes,
thank you.
We have
Thank
access
you.
to the resources. And let us go on and move to a bit different topic connected with our turbulent time we're living in. And let me welcome Professor Alessandro Vitale, our guest from Italy, and our ardent supporter of Ukraine and our university in particular. So Associate Professor, Faculty of Political, Economic and Social Sciences, University of Milan, Italy. Professor Alessandro Vitale will be speaking on the use of specific words to define mass violence. Welcome. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you, Larissa. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very glad to be here with you. Дуже дякую за запрошення.
Дякуємо.
Since I'm a political scientist and a political geographer, my speech is a bit related with, unfortunately, very actual and tragic reality, and is devoted to the relationship between language and the phenomenon of organized mass violence. I'm sorry I haven't prepared a PowerPoint presentation because time is short, but this is a far-reaching problem, as the disconnection between the language and reality, I mean scientific findings on this subject, has serious practical consequences, in my opinion. Although in recent decades, several interdisciplinary studies and in-depth analysis have made relevant moves toward a coherent theory and the identification of typology of mass violence, particularly the explanation of organized, intensive, and extensive violence, such as democides, genocides, mass killings, and so on, and the individual and group behavior that foster it, there continues to be a current use only of some definitions, and especially the use of genocide, which not only hinders its widespread understanding, but also very markedly influences a reduced or even distorted perception of the phenomenon. The historical, political, and social sciences have produced in recent decades a clear advancement of research on the subject of mass violence. The theory and typology of mass violence are derived from statistics and countless information gathered from reality, historical and present. In other words, theory has not been developed in a vacuum, historical and factual, but on the basis of empirical foundations and in constant confrontation with the reality. So it's very interesting because their results enabled, first of all, a more precise definition of forms of mass violence, and secondly, the identification of some of the most determinant structural causes of the phenomenon, a more precise typologization, a valuable tool, this one to guide research, a consistent statistical mathematical processing of quantitative data collected over several decades, and even the identification of markers that can enable early warning and even predict with a high degree of probability mass violence to its extreme consequences. And also, finally, the attempt to move from partial and local theories to an empirically grounded general theory. So I think it's very important because these advances in knowledge have been followed by more precise definitions corresponding to concepts that are more precise. These, above all, in addition to quantitative and qualitative data, are fundamental and are a real compass for orientation, theoretical, whether theoretical or practical. Proper terminology helps, as linguists know very, very well, not only to eliminate many misunderstandings and not to confuse different phenomena, but also to build analytical and comparative frames of reference. So mass violence, which has reached peaks of planning, assume frightening proportions in the 20th century, but is also unfortunately manifesting itself in this first half of the 21st century all over the world, and in such brutal forms as to stimulate psychological removal, because it appears increasingly unspeakable, unacceptable, and monstrous. Yet it also continues to be regarded as an object of international criminal persecution, and that is why deletion of evidence and denial have become an obsession of perpetrators much more than in the past. The use of current definition, however, does not help the fight against this phenomenon. In fact, there is a prevalence of the use of the term genocide, which downplays all others. Democide is much wider than genocide, politicized, mass murder, and so on, relativizing them or even making them disappear. Instead, the reality is that the genocide is only a subspecies of the more general phenomenon of democide, which has bloated the 20th century and this century, unfortunately. In the 20th century alone, democide provoked by governments not in war, according to Rudolf Rummel, an American scholar, a prominent researcher in international relations and a prominent scholar in the studying of war. Democide provoked, including also the victims of colonialism who were initially excluded, and the Chinese democide, which includes the provoked famine of 1958-1961, caused 262 million of massacres. That is 6 times all the civil and interstate wars of the 20th century. It is as if the world had been hit by a catastrophic, slow-moving nuclear war. most of the democide is attributable to governments in the countries of real socialism, about 140 million, two-thirds of the entire phenomenon in the 20th century. The Soviet Union of Lenin, Stalin, and their successor, 63 million victims, and Mao's China, nearly 70 million, the most recent estimate. So we have a concept, a very clear concept of, and also a mathematical defined democide, statistical defined democide, which means the intentional killing of unarmed people, entire peoples and groups by government or paramilitary troops affiliated with it. Not in war, or even in the course of war, not for warlike causes, and in any case in violation of international conventions aimed at limiting warfare. As with genocide, intentionality, premeditation is crucial. And it is characterized by cold planning. In the 20th century, it manifested itself in its icy, extreme form in planning for quotas or randomly selected citizens to be eliminated, understood as a political bureaucratic task to be carried out to meet a plan so as to reach a percentage quota of the population to be eliminated for whatever reasons. So democide means the physical elimination of unarmed, defenseless, or non-combatant people by those in power and their helpers. The theory of democide represents an extension of that relating to the subspecies of extermination caused by mass violence, in that it incorporates in their overlapping and intersecting genocide, politicide, and almost the entire typology of mass murders. So democide, this is the most important thing. I think democide actually is an innovative concept, and at the same time a theory of considerable magnitude, as it has also been shown to be able to explain all those phenomena that previous classifications were unable to categorize and explain, especially that of genocides. Unlike the concept of genocide, it is in fact limited to intentional killing and does not extend to attempts to eliminate cultures or people by means other than killing people. Moreover, it is of paramount importance because it describes the complexity of a phenomenon of tremendous proportions compared to genocide, for instance. Most of the detectable cases of democide in the 20th century were the direct and flagrant responsibility of governments. In many countries, democide was an integral part of the policy of the governments that ruled them and the result of deliberated public policy. However, mass media and lawyers continue to consider as an extreme and often exclusive form of mass violence only genocide, which is a minimal part of the much larger democide. So genocide is a bit different, is deliberate, as it is well known, intentional, specific, and systematic planned physical elimination in war or in part of ethnic, cultural, linguistic, and national and or religious groups. The ultimate intent is to extirpate from humankind a group deemed not worthy of existence and all its members. It is an attempt by a political power group to violently destroy, with the aim of driving it to extinction, a minority and vulnerable group of the helpless, whose integration into the model of society that another hegemonic minority intends to assert it's deemed impossible or harmful. So genocide is the extreme form of ethnic cleansing. We know very well this problem. However, genocide does not include other extreme forms of mass violence, which can be the size of tens of millions of people murdered. For example, genocide does not cover mass killing. And mass killing is another category we should use. Then there are politicides, form of mass extermination conducted by those in power to enforce specific policies and or to physically eliminate dissent. This is a tradition of the French Revolution and the Soviet power and so on and so forth. And this type does not fall under genocide, but is part of democides, and in 20th century alone was responsible for the physical elimination of tens of millions of people. So the concept of genocide cannot be used to identify every intensive massacre, because it is a product of a conception that is too limited, insufficient to define all large-scale mass killings that exceed the ethno-national motivations referring to the groups to which one belongs by birth, which could be defined indelible groups. In some cases, in fact, it has been possible to utilize the term genocide only to classify a minimal part of a democide actually carried out. For instance, the Cambodian genocide, recognizable only in the parts referable to the extermination of a few national and religious minorities, such as Vietnamese, Cham, Thai, Lao, Kola, and so on, and Buddhist, and so on, and not entire masses of the people eliminated. So this is the reason why it was used the nonsensical definition of auto-genocide, which is really untenable. Raphael Lemkin himself, the well-known father of the term and concept of genocide, a native of Lviv, like Hersch Lauterpacht, a scholar of the same legal problem, gave a much broader definition than the one later accepted by the 1948 UN Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide. The legal definition of the phenomenon is inadequate for historical empirical investigation, and also risks making international law inapplicable. This is the most important thing. Indeed, every act committed with the intent of annihilate political, ideological, economic, military, professional, or other groups cannot be classified as genocide. Genocide does not include the intent to destroy non-indelible groups, political, economic, professional, and so on, as in the case in the much broader democide. So, in conclusion, the problem is that most of the mass killings perpetrated by governments were directed precisely at annihilating such groups and not at war. Evidently, public murders and intentionality was inherent in the act itself. So why is so important to use also in law to use a much broader concepts? Because we cannot reduce to the genocide the responsibility of mass killing. This is the most important thing. Terrorist famines, for instance, provoked and used as a weapon in the USSR, Ukraine, China, Mozambique, North Korea, Ethiopia, Cambodia, and so on, are part of democide. But more specifically, some of these can also be classified as genocide. For instance, the Ukrainian Holodomor of 1932-1933, as recognized by numerous specialists, the cause of 4-6 million starvation deaths, as they contain the component of fighting against a specific national group, at that time reluctant to submit. These are mass killings resulting from deliberate government policies. So, but if we use only the word genocide, the problem of mass killing is not solved, also under the law consideration. And I think it's very important also for linguistics, because the exclusive use of the term genocide is a performative linguistic act, a performative adherence that shapes reality by creating a partial one, as it leads one to believe that if genocide is not present, all other types of mass violence are either not present or are irrelevant or even non-existent, which is not possible, of course. And indeed, we are faced with a case which the use of words succeeds in creating a one-sided reality that excludes other similar phenomena, which may also be much more widespread, numerous, and severe in quantitative terms. So the official and limiting use of the term genocide by not matching the reality of a much broader phenomenon such as democide as mass violence also reduce the possibility of prosecuting much broader and more different crimes against humanity. Human communication and social linguistics can explain why and how this happens when the use of a word is aimed at canalizing its meaning. So it's very important, in my opinion, the collaboration, a wide collaboration between linguistics and political science and human size also in this respect. And because it should be kept in mind that millions of people continue to live in countries ruled by regimes that have been and are inherently inclined to perpetrate democides. And only the forms, places, times, technical efficiency, institutional framework, and the legitimizing purpose change, but nothing all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Vitale, for raising this issue. Unfortunately, we do live in the world of violence, and language reflects this notion. Dear colleagues, any questions, comments, remarks? Well, I couldn't have thought that the genocide has so many terms of the lower level. Democide, you mentioned, politicide, autogenocide, etc., etc. So yes, language makes us be aware of what is happening in reality.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
May I?
Olga Mikhailivna, yes, you're welcome.
Yeah. Well, I have a little question. Maybe it's related to the topic you've raised, especially the issue of mass violence. So, what can we learn of? Are there any positive cases from other countries that we can implement as successful strategies to reduce mass violence?
Yeah, thank you for your question. Of course, the problem is to prevent, but there are many tools that can help to prevent in early warning, for instance. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Listening.
Okay. So the most interesting thing I think is that we have some tools we can apply, we can use in order to prevent mass violence because they are grounded on empirically derived elements, historical and so on. And it's possible to prevent. Of course, the problem is how to implement policies in order to stop the beginning of mass violence and especially genocides and politicides and so on. So of course it's not so easy, and but we have the possibility to at least because in social sciences we have the problem of human action, which is very difficult to forecast, of course. But some instrument we can use in order to prevent it. And internationally speaking, of course, the institutions today are unable to stop the beginning of mass violence, and democides. But I think the first step is to widen legally the recognition of this phenomenon. Because if we consider democides or politicides as not so important as genocides, we would be wrong, of course. We have, first of all, to recognize the magnitude, as wrote Rudolf Rammel, for instance, the magnitude of democides. In the 20th century, democides were something enormous and incredible, something unacceptable, because they provoked 6 times more assassinated than internal and international wars, which is an enormous amount of. But of course, the universities, for instance, this topic is totally neglected. Of course, for instance, in the course of international relations, they don't want to compare democides with international and internal wars and civil wars, because the comparison is something incredible. But this is an enormous problem, and we know now, of course, we cannot use for every case study the terms of genocide, but democide and politicide and mass murder are not less tragic and not less worth of the searching of responsibilities, legal responsibilities.
Yeah, you do raise this importance of the necessity of collaboration among politicians, management of the education system, linguists, so we can work all together to get rid of that notion, at least to some extent. Thank you, Professor Vitale.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so let us move on to a practical aspect of our meeting today. Since Michael Furber has joined us, let us welcome him. And we will move to the workshop, again, having our students with us today. So we will have some practical, we will gain some practical skills now. Hello, Michael.
Good morning, Larissa.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Yes, just let me introduce you. Michael is specialist in e-learning. He's e-learning development coach. He works in Cambridge Regional College. And he has agreed to share his expertise with us today. Now you're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to thank Larissa for inviting me this morning. It's a great honor to speak to you all. And I've been lucky enough to work with Larissa in the ESOL department as well. So as well as being an e-learning coach, I have a background in language teaching. And we've been lucky enough to have Larissa for about 18 months. Had as a result of the terrible events in Ukraine, and it's been a great honor to do whatever small thing we can in the college to support the people coming over to England. And I think language is a crucial part of that in terms of assimilating into another culture in a very difficult circumstance. So that's not part of my presentation, but I wanted to add that. And yeah, so I'm going to present to you this morning some of what I see are the trends in using technology in teaching, and perhaps a little bit of history just to put it into context in that that those trends have been there for some time. So we'll just, if I could share with you my presentation. So I'm just going to call that up.
Meanwhile, I have shared the website of our department where the recording program and the book of abstracts will be presented, so everybody can have the access. Mm-hmm. Yes, we can see a screen.
Excellent. So from the beginning. So we're just looking here at trends in technology-enhanced learning. So going back to the 1950s, I think there has been a long relationship between technology and learning languages. So even during the Korean War, the American military were able to intercept communications and use recordings to quickly teach the Korean language. And from their methodology that was developed, came a method of language teaching called audiolingualism, which is using recordings, and that's become an established resource for language teachers. So the value of recordings goes back a long way, and that grew into what we knew as language laboratories. And I don't know if that was such a popular thing in Ukraine, but in the UK, language laboratories where students self-accessed recordings of the target language that they were learning, and every modern language school had this language laboratory and schools used it, and the use of audio recording became a vital technology in terms of self-learning. When we got into the 1990s and the advent of the internet, it became another tool. So we had a lot of internet-based learning, a lot of sharing of teaching resources, and specialist language learning websites. So People for the first time were able to access a lot of materials that had previously been the domain of teachers. They could go in and learn themselves. And then when we got into the 2000s and 2020 to about 2020, a methodology grew out of this technology, referred to sometimes as flipped learning and blended learning. So blended learning was just that technology was integrated into the language teaching, and flipped learning went a stage further, and it gave the responsibility of the input of ideas using video or whatever that students could access themselves, and when they arrived at the lessons, they already had some knowledge. So we also had the advent of LMS, which we call learning management systems. So a number of examples of these, like Moodle and Canvas and Blackboard. So I'll get into a bit more detail about that. And currently, we had the pandemic in 2020 and post-pandemic. So we got into the area of hybrid and remote learning. So hybrid being some people in the classroom, some people at home, and also teachers teaching from home. More recently, we've looked at the advent of AI and AI models of language learning and apps on phones, etc. And I think with each one of these developments, there has been some permanent change. So we'd see these things like use of recordings to learn languages in the 1950s. That stayed, and internet teaching resources being shared. And I think the same is true of AI. I think we're going to see a great change from the point that AI comes in. There are obviously a lot of concerns with that, a lot of issues and problems with that, but we also have some opportunities which come with the arrival of AI. So just to talk a little bit more about flipped and blended learning. So blended learning is online learning mixed with classroom learning and self-access resources. So I think students these days expect some sort of blended component when they learn something. They expect to have a level of technology. It's only a part of what we do. It's only a tool. It's not the main thing that we do. However, I do think, especially younger students now, they expect to have some sort of impressive technological component. And flipped learning, again, just to give a definition, that learning points are researched and accessed by students prior to the lesson. Teachers check how much learning has taken place and allow for further practice and assessment of learning. So a student will come having watched a YouTube video or having accessed an online platform, and then the teacher's role becomes one of assessing how much learning has taken place and then giving the student more opportunity to use that knowledge and perhaps build on it. So we move away from the kind of Confucian method of learning that the Chinese would talk about, in that the teacher is a jug of water pouring knowledge into the student's head. So it takes that responsibility away from the teacher, which that also has its place. And I think there will always be a place for teacher delivery and for teachers disseminating information. However, we have to understand that in the modern world, people get information from different places, not only from teachers talking. So it moves away from the teacher being the fountain of all wisdom to using the available technology. So flipped learning, and people talked about flipped learning for a long time without doing it. So it was a theory that existed for a long time, and teachers worried about, oh, I should be doing flipped learning, I should be doing blended learning. And there's a lot of doubt about what this means in reality, what it means in practice. And I think as the years have gone by, we have a model for that now. 2020 and the pandemic accelerated change and leaves a lasting legacy. So I remember talking to a group of teachers in September 2019, and I said, here is the Teams platform. And the group of teachers looked at me and said, yes, that's very pretty, but we'll never use it. And 6 months later, they were all forced into teaching online, and I suddenly became very popular because I knew about it. And so nobody expected that change. I remember the manager of the e-learning department saying to me, we've just moved forward 10 years in a week. So the pandemic forced this sort of huge change. Around the world, many classes went online. We're talking on Zoom today, and this is just something we take for granted. If we'd gone back 5 years, perhaps it would have been quite a special moment to have a meeting on Zoom, or it might have been quite unusual. And now it's just something which is completely normal. Hybrid delivery, as learners returned to the classroom, teachers had some learners online. I don't know what it was like where you were, but we had in the college, I had learners online and I had learners at home. And there were a lot of issues with that. A lot of teachers found it very stressful. There was a lot of complaining. Teachers like to complain. It's part of the stress relief process. And often as the e-learning person, they complained to me. So it was often just trying to find ways of making that process easier on the teachers. And I think a lot of people feel pressure in online meetings to talk and talk and talk, just like I'm doing now. But I think in a language learning classroom, that's not really very helpful. So I think that you have to break it up with interactive activities. You have to break it up with student-led activities. You have to break it up with collaborative activities. So I think the model of learning has to be slightly different for hybrid delivery and remote delivery. But again, I think we have this lasting legacy of something that a change happens and then we're left with permanent effect of that change. Post-pandemic, we have a slightly different picture. We have some permanent change. We have online meetings, flipped and blended learning still evident, and teachers have had to develop online strategies and support materials. So we're left with having to develop our own online persona, and we all become very conscious of what we look like online and worried about whether these cameras make us look nice or whether we are presenting ourselves in an effective way. And these changes, you know, some of them are for good, some of them perhaps are more superficial. So about a year ago, there was a moral panic surrounding AI. And the appearance of ChatGPT in December 2022, AI became big news. We all worried that robots were going to take over the world and we were going to be invaded by robotic teachers or whatever was going to happen. As the year has gone on, so spring 2023, the appearance of ChatGPT, AI became big news. We had initial concerns about students cheating, which I think was the biggest story. And I think is still a very relevant question. So we have to deal with what we have. Usually I can see if a student has used ChatGPT within about 2.5 seconds. I can see that this student does not use the word metaphor, and it's present in the first line. As the year has gone on, we have seen the potential teachers have become aware of the potential for labor saving and resource creation. And we start to recognize that this is basically a bit like a microwave oven, that it just produces things very quickly that before we had to spend a lot of time on. And I've been creating a lot of online content using AI and some resource creation facilities that it has. And we're also getting a growing knowledge about the effective prompting of AI to generate usable content, because AI can actually generate a lot of rubbish. And we generally, if people don't know how to use it, it will just generate stuff that is not usable. So I'm going to look at that a little bit with you this morning and talk about what makes effective use of AI and ineffective use of AI. So basically, an ineffective use of AI is vague prompting of it. So if you said to AI, give me a lesson on car engines, AI will then try to pull in everything on the internet about car engines, and you'll have a huge, broad thing that will not be a usable lesson. So we need details about the subject, the students who you're teaching, the qualification that you're teaching, and the context. And this will produce more effective results. So here we can see the lesson. If I said, give me a lesson on car engines, you'd have everything about car engines. So in the college that we work in, we have a lot of vocational students who are learning to be car mechanics. And so I've been working with those teachers as well to produce lesson plans. So that's obviously not very helpful. However, if you put in, give me a 1.5-hour practical lesson on clutch function and components for a group of learners, including differentiation for a student with dyslexia, you would then come up with something much more usable. So you'd come up with something which would target that group of learners within a specific time frame for a more specific context. So we have the elements of a good prompt. So you could ask the AI to adopt a persona, so to take a role. So for example, here it says, act as a tutor who breaks down complex subjects into easy explanations. Objective, what would you like the AI to do? I would like you to explain the process of and then we have the audience to a 17-year-old student. So you specify who it's for, the context of the exam that they're studying towards, and then the boundaries. So your answer should be in 300 words with a tone that's friendly and educational. Using these sort of parameters, you'll produce something that becomes usable. You could still look at it as a teacher and say, I'm not happy with this. This doesn't fit what I'm doing, but it could generate for you some part of the lesson, especially if you're under time pressure to produce a lot of elaborate lesson plans. So I think if we go forward 10 years following this trend, I think we'll see these things still being used. So it's worth noting that AI prompting can be useful for different aspects of educational provision, such as lesson plannings, creation of quizzes and assessments, course material development, and student engagement and support. So here we see some examples of effective AI prompting. So I'm not going to read these out to you, but you can see how very specific they are. There are also softwares that will check AI usage, so you can identify that this homework or assignment was probably produced by AI. Yeah. I think this last point on the slide is what I'd like to leave you with, is that remember that AI is a tool and it's not substituting for your experience. To get the best out of it, you use your own judgment and re-prompt until you have something you're happy with. So a teacher is still a teacher. AI is just another tool. It's a bit like fire. It's not good or bad. It's just what you do with it. And I think that's my little history of technology and language learning. And I'm just going to stop sharing again. Okay, so I'm happy to field any questions or any sort of dialogue on any of those points if anybody has anything.
Thank you, Michael, so much.
Yeah.
Yes, Olga Mikhailovna, you're welcome with the question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. It was really inspiring and enlightening. Thank you so much. And I have a couple of questions. So the first one relates to flipped learning and how does it fit within the paradigm of open distance and digital education, ODDE, so to speak. And another one is, I was wondering about your take on gamification.
Absolutely.
And the last one, but not last but not least, maybe about digital divide. What do we have to do about digital divide?
Yeah, these are really good questions. So I think flipped learning these days, when somebody observes a lesson, so if we have management or quality control observing it, it's just something that for variety. So also, has the teacher considered maybe some way of incorporating digital tools into their lessons? So I don't think it's there just as an attractive thing. I think it's just maybe a methodology that is incorporated overall. So perhaps as part of your practice, you include it so students are not surprised when they see that from this particular teacher, that it's just something completely normal. So I think was it flipped or blended learning you were interested in? Sorry, can you remind me?
Yeah, flipped learning, flipped.
So flipped learning, yeah, I think it's not something you would do every time, but I think it could be something that makes the students more autonomous, so that students have some autonomy, that they're not reliant on you. So I think language learning, I don't know about you, but when I was at school, language learning was very teacher-centered. So the teacher was the center of everything. And I was reliant on the teacher for everything. And when I went to a French market at the age of 12 or 13, I remember opening my mouth to speak and realizing that I didn't have the confidence, I didn't have the social tools to have a conversation. I was completely passive. So I think with language learning, old-fashioned language learning was very much successful for a small group of people. And it was considered something you were good at or you were not good at. But if you think about language acquisition, all of us here have very sophisticated language skills. And we learned that not in a classroom, but with our parents or at home. So we learned in a real life situation and we were active in that process. So I think flipped learning is just an extension of that, is that we are active in our learning. It's not just spoon-fed to us by a teacher I think also the teacher has a lot of responsibility in order to direct and support students. But I think the idea of flipped learning, so my son last summer, I came out and he was dismantling a bike and he was taking a bicycle apart and putting it back together. And I said, "Where did you learn to do that?" And he just looked at me and said, "YouTube." And I was amazed at the skills which had been acquired because he wanted to do it and the information was available. So nobody, I think if somebody took him to a class and said, "Right, you must learn about a bicycle," he would have said, "Oh, this is boring." But I think when you have motivation and when you do something for yourself, I think there's a level of learning that takes place. So if somebody wants to learn to play the guitar or something, or the piano, it's very different if they do it themselves from or with a teacher. But I think the immersion in the activity is the important thing. So I think flipped learning has a great value, but it's not always going to be like that. It's not everything is taught through flipped learning. So I think people tend to think it's like a religion that you have to believe in, but it's basically, it's just another way of getting the student to be autonomous, is my perspective on it. And I've forgotten your second question. There was a second and a third question.
It was the second one was about your take on gamification, and the third one was about digital divide.
Absolutely, I think gamification is a fantastic idea. I'm currently teaching English GCSE to a group of teenage construction workers. And if I talk to them about metaphors and similes, I would lose them. But if I put a Kahoot game on, they are all on the edge of their seat and they're all desperate to win. And I think for some students, that's very, very motivating. So I think gamification, young people these days, I sound like an old man, but young people these days, sometimes they find films boring because they have no control over the ending. So young people these days love games and computer games, and it's often the way the brain works is like competitive things. So I love it, but I don't know if everybody loves it, but I think that it has a great motivating attraction. And your third question, I'm sorry. Sorry, I can't see your name.
About digital divide. It was about
digital. Oh, yes. A huge issue, I think, for governments and funding of education is providing digital resources for disadvantaged groups. So in the college where we are, we provide laptops because we serve a part of the community that is not rich, and we're talking about working class young people. So we try to make sure that everybody has access. If we go to developing countries, this could be more difficult, but I think this is a huge issue. Young people seem to find a way to have the latest iPhone in their pocket, but I'm aware that not everybody in the world has access to digital resources. So I think as we become more developed around the world, perhaps we need to address that digital divide. I think it's a very, very important point.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And we've got a question from one of our students. Vitale,
Sure.
you're welcome.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the possibility.
Right.
I think my question will continue our conversation.
Yep.
So remote learning has made this process easier for students and learners from all over the world. It's like absolutely no doubt about this.
Yep.
But at the same time, for majority of teachers, as they say, the amount of time they spend for preparation, for checking, for conducting classes has increased.
Yes.
Undoubtedly, students will continue to use artificial intelligence in the future. So how can we maybe help teachers, lecturers, and the same STEM students function as a body, as a whole engine, function together? Not just to use all the achievements of technology like AI or something like this, but to make our learning process more at a higher quality level. You talked about motivation, but you know, motivation for adults and for youngsters, these are different things. So maybe you can give a piece of advice based on your own experience, if it's possible.
Yeah. So looking at research from around the world, a lot of students feel that their teachers are not adequately trained to deliver digital learning. So a lot of students feel their teachers are not confident in using these platforms. And I think it's true. And working very closely to support teachers, I see a lot of lack of confidence. And teachers will say to me, it's terrible, you know, I'm awful at technology, and they take it very personally. So I think the level of support that the education system has to give to teachers has to be better. So we have to make sure that teachers are trained, that this is not putting more pressure on teachers, because I think you make a good point, is that people feel like they're working harder, and it's supposed to be the other way around. It's supposed to save us labor. But actually we feel like we're answering, we're dealing with messages at 10 o'clock at night from students messaging me saying, you know, I can't find my assignment. I was like, okay, leave me alone, I'm watching Netflix. No, I don't say that. But sometimes I think teachers have to have boundaries. So maybe we need to switch off devices at 6 o'clock or something like that. Or we need to train teachers, and we need to train teachers to be more effective and more confident in those areas. Because I think a lot of the time I see teachers getting upset and frustrated and exhausted by this. And it's just one more pressure for something they're not good at. It's just another pressure. So I think the support has to be there. I think I can say that for definite. But I think these are very good and important points that you're making.
Thanks a lot.
Mm.
Yes, thank you, Michael. Yeah, you have spoken for each of us. Yes, we do need to respect each other's boundaries, especially in this digital world when we work 24 hours, 7 days a week. And everybody would agree with me, right? That's when we get messages. Yeah, the clock round. So students, you have to respect.
Switch off notifications on Friday at 5 o'clock is my
See, there's a good suggestion for everyone to follow. Any other questions, comments while we have this chance to talk to the expert? Yes, Natalia, you're welcome.
Yes, Michael, thanks a lot for this great presentation. So you obviously put a lot of stamina and enthusiasm into, you know, learning to deal with these online tools. So my question is about hybrid delivery, because, you know, I've been mystified with these concepts, and it seems to me that this is more of a, you know, desperate times, desperate measures. So I just wonder, and you just look like you kind of appreciated the idea. So can this work? Because I haven't found any, you know, convincing psychological basis that could be, you know, underlying this concept of hybrid delivery or its efficiency.
I fought a losing battle to convince teachers that it could work. But from my personal experience, I found that there was a way of making it work, which was maybe giving things to do to the people who are at home, having a very small amount of presentation, but making that count. So if you say, okay, I need everybody to listen, if you're at home or in the room, I need you to listen for the next 5 minutes of what you're doing. And then you would send the materials to the person at home. I think it had to be very carefully constructed. And I think the problem for teachers is people are dealing with what's happening in the room, and then you're having to remember that there's somebody at home listening to a lot of noise and background noise. So I think it has to be very carefully controlled. You have to be conscious of turning off your microphone at the right moment, of perhaps linking the people in the room with the people online. So it could be a collaborative tool that gives them both access. So I think there are ways and tricks of doing it, but it requires, it's like doing two things at the same time. So some people are good at that. Some people find it very difficult, and some people got very angry with it. And I had to deliver training sessions on this, and I found a lot of the time it just became a riot of teachers saying, "Isn't this terrible?" But my experience, my personal experience of it was I found it quite exciting. Maybe I'm strange, but I've just found it a challenge. It was a little bit like being a media broadcaster when you're dealing with different information coming in. But I think you have to be very clear what you want people to do. And you can't just do the same thing that you did in the classroom with the hybrid learners. So it might be that some activities don't work with both groups at the same time. So you might have to have a plan for what you do with the people at home while you do something in the classroom. To your question, can it work? I think yes, but sometimes I feel like I'm in a minority.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Michael, could you please name maybe some other, as you say, labor-saving tools? So you give an example of Copilot.
Yeah, so we have...
Which other tools do you use? Yeah.
We have a platform called Teachermatic, which has been designed for teachers, so it's very easily usable. So Teachermatic is an AI platform that generates very, very specific content. And then you can export that content into other platforms like Moodle or Kahoot. And you need to buy a license for it. Actually, the version of AI is an older generation, but it's been developed by educational professionals who have teachers in mind. So ChatGPT is just a chatbot. If you know how to use ChatGPT, you can get the same content as Teachermatic, but you have to it's about the prompting. So you've got Bing Copilot is another one, ChatGPT. A lot of things now are AI and people don't realize it's AI. So when you have PowerPoint Designer, if you click on the design function, the AI will create different designs. So there are lots of these platforms out there which mark student work within very narrow parameters. So if you put a piece of student writing into any AI chatbot and just said, can you correct the use of verbs in this? It would do that. And I'm aware that there are lots of commercial versions of this. So I went to a technology conference in January, and there were thousands of these different people selling different things. Mostly they do the same thing. So whatever you have, like Bing Copilot or ChatGPT or Teachermatic AI, it's all AI. So it's about the instruction you put into it. So, yeah.
So we have to learn how to deal with AI.
I would say that the people in the world of the future, the students we teach are going to have to deal with AI, especially the young people. So I don't think we can put our head in the sand over this. I don't think we can ignore it. So I know there are people who are very much against it and people who think it's the end of civilization. I don't really agree. I think it's a bit like television or something that people thought was going to destroy civilization. Maybe it has some negative impact, but also you can't ignore it. So I think we have to learn to use what's good about it and be aware of what is potentially harmful.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? We have a guest today from Georgia, Mariam Kabure, am I right? Yes, she just shared with us the link to Teacher-matic, and she thanks you, Michael, for this inspiring and thought-provoking presentation and how to handle all of these challenges we face today with loads of AI-inspired tools for teaching.
It's a great honor and a pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, so much.
Okay.
And we will proceed with one more plenary topic. We have a colleague, Associate Professor Nataliia Burka. She will speak on non-normative language. Okay, you're welcome. Won't spoil anything. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Вітаю, колеги, вітаю всіх учасників конференції. Мова моєї доповіді сьогодні буде українська. Це пов'язано перш за все з матеріалом мого дослідження. Проблема, яку ми сьогодні будемо обговорювати, це ненормативна лексика, як уже головуюча оголосила, реальність та перспективи дослідження. Ненормативна лексика у широкому розумінні відіграє, на наш погляд, роль одного із потужних глибинних джерел саморозвитку усіх існуючих на сьогодні мов. На тлі нескінченного прирощення словникового запасу кожної мови, що відбувається природнім шляхом за рахунок впровадження в неї неологізмів, ненормативна лексика є за сутністю результатом інтегрування смислу взаємодії кількох неологізмів у стислі поняття та висловлювання. Характерною особливістю породження ненормативної лексики стає стрімке зростання кількості її першоджерел, безпосередньо пов'язане з неухильним технологічним прогресом та переходом міжлюдських стосунків на новий рівень інформаційної взаємодії. Це призводить насамперед до появи обмежених і непослідовних підходів до дослідження феноменів виникнення функціонування та зникнення з мови певних елементів нормативної лексики. Але сучасна наука вимагає системного і послідовного розгляду низки головних питань проблеми функціонування ненормативної лексики. У відомому словнику сучасного українського сленгу під редакцією Кондратюк цілком логічно вказано на недоречність пошуку синонімії конкретних ненормативних термінів та підкреслено необхідність розібратись в історії кожного терміна, зіставивши розвиток явища, позначуваного терміном, і самого терміна, а також розібратися у підґрунті дифузійного сприйняття термоодиниць сленг, жаргон і арго. У цьому ж словнику знаходимо, що існує кілька класів різновидів ненормативної лексики, оскільки основною причиною несумісності є різномовне та різночасове запозичення слів, то різним виявляється їх функціональне навантаження. Так, термін «арго» та «жаргон», запозичені з французької мови, «арго», «жаргон», відображають стилістичне розшарування саме французької мови. Поняття «сленг» походить, звісно, з англійської мови і є більш притаманним західній лінгвістичній традиції. У той час, як пуристично налаштовані французькі лінгвісти уникають використання чужомовного елемента і оперують оригінальними арго та жаргон, а в англійській мові вільно співіснують усі три терміни. Оскільки результати історичного розвитку різних мов переконливо свідчать про безпосередній зв'язок виникнення ненормативної лексики з рівнями-носіями, то виникає сенс співвіднесення певних груп ненормативної лексики з культурними рівнями мовців, що їх використовують. Критерієм, яким доцільно скористатися для диференціювання цих термінологічних груп, має слугувати ступінь їх відхилення від мовної норми – малий, середній та великий. Для цього достатньо здійснити зіставний аналіз змісту трьох основних понять. Арго є найдавнішою формою мовної соціальної інтеграції певної групи, так звана таємна мова. Її кодовою ознакою, паролем, що організує певне коло, може організувати певне коло і дає відчуття співтовариства. Функціонуючи в таких невеликих закритих групах, мова арго має езотеричний характер, тобто є відома лише членам цього колективу і слугує своєрідним соціальним маркером. В арго найсильніше виявляється соціально-символічна функція мови. З одного боку, володіння лексичним кодом арго протиставляє представників тієї чи іншої корпорації, ставить її в опозицію до іншої частини соціуму, а з другого слугує міцним об'єднувальним чинником всередині цієї групи, внутрішнім інтегратором для її членів. Отже, арго, як мова малих соціально замкнутих груп, є її соціальним маркером і слугує засобом відмежування протиставлення членів цієї групи іншій частині суспільства. Жаргон – це мова утворення, заснована насамперед на соціальній організації людей, у якому найрівномірніше реалізуються дві функції – соціально-символічна та експресивна. Сленг має загальне значення, неформальна мова, як особливий периферійний пласт нелітературної лексики і фразеології. Сленг знаходиться як і поза межами літературно-розмовної мови, так і поза діалектами загальнонаціональної мови. Виходячи зі змістового наповнення аналізованих понять, за критерієм наростання ступеня їх відхилення від мовної норми, ми отримуємо такий векторний ланцюжок – арго, жаргон, сленг. Цей ланцюжок і притаманно нам за морфологічний ряд, прийнятий нами за морфологічний ряд трьох відповідних лексичних груп термінів ненормативної лексики. Зображений на першому ієрархічному рівні їх класифікації, наведений на рисунку 1. На другому рівні класифікації розташовані підгрупи термінів ненормативної лексики, стратифіковані за відношенням до її носіїв. До групи 1 арго відносимо, наприклад, такі підгрупи термінів: шкільні, ті, що належать до бурс або бурсацький термін є, літературних персонажів тощо. Подібним чином диференційовано підгрупи термінів ненормативної лексики у групах 2 жаргон та 3 сленг. Так, підгрупа 3 сленгу диференційовано на підгрупи: медичний, книголюбів, спортсменів, військовий, студентський, шкільний, молодіжний, газетерів, музикантів, автомобілістів, айтішників, комп'ютерщиків, кримінальний, еротично-сексуальний, алко- та наркозалежних осіб тощо. Цей перелік може бути безкінечним. В класифікації нами наведено лише стислий перелік ознак існуючих підгруп термінів ненормативної лексики, але навіть з цього фрагменту стає зрозуміло тенденція повторення самих груп у їх більш загальних групах – арго, жаргон та сленг. В умовах обмеження формату відображення рисунку 1 для переходу на третій ієрархічний рівень класифікації ознак нормативної лексики скористаємося можливостями подальшого системного викладу особливостей структурного зв'язку її елементів у вербально-цифровому вигляді у відповідності до рекомендацій джерела Олександра Валерійовича Клименюка. Для цього, звертаючись до понять, наведених у публікації, підгрупу термінів 1.1, шкільний, наприклад, арго, поділяємо за їх призначенням на менші підгрупи, до складу яких і війдуть конкретні терміни. Завдяки цьому ми отримуємо можливість поглиблення класифікації до 4-го кінцевого рівня ієрархії термінів неформальної лексики школярів у такому вигляді. Скорочення назв предметів – літчит, матем, укрмова, укрліт, фізра, інглиш. Наприклад, фамільярного забарвлення – училка, математичка, хімічка, жаргонізація назв навчальних заходів, домашка, ДЗ, контроша, політична термінологія, вата, ватники, популярні англіцизми, фейк, постити, аватарка, баг, блог, загуглити, зафрендити, діхтер, лузер, так далі. Подібно неважко класифікувати неформальні терміни школярів і в області лексичної групи 3 сленг, поглибивши їх розподіл у підгрупи шкільних сленгів з урахуванням призначення. Для цього достатньо скористатися такими загальновідомими словами і виразами, що залишаються сленгами протягом тривалого часу, але ніколи повністю не переходять в загальновживану мову. Баян, ботан, відос, зависити і так далі. Виклад надає нам підстави вважати, що з теоретичної точки зору реальний стан вивчення проблеми функціонування ненормативної лексики, по-перше, характеризується тим ступенем накопичення наукового знання, який дає можливість створення вичерпної системної вербально-цифрової класифікації її сучасного і майбутнього неформального термінологічного апарату у відповідності з запропонованими вище підходом. По-друге, з практичного погляду, сформована у цій роботі класифікація здатна відігравати роль логічної основи в процесах вивчення явищ, виникнення, функціонування та зникнення ненормативної лексики з мови в процесах викладу результатів такого вивчення. На означених умовах бачається перспективним поступове створення часткових міжнаукових картин буття ненормативної лексики в окремих мовах, в подальших зведеннях їх у певний мультинауковий образ.
Thank you so much. Dear guest participants, do you have any questions? Yes, Olga Ilchenko.
Thank you very much, Natalia, for your presentation, for interesting problem or discussion. I would like you to make more, to concretize maybe, to make more explicit, the perspectives of your research. You've just analyzed the lexicon from the Ukrainian language. Are you going to analyze any other languages?
Thank you very much for the question. Of course, it's just the beginning of the investigation, because I think because the reality is that we deal with this vocabulary on daily duties every day, even while communicating with students. So that's why, yes, it's interesting. And of course, the English language is while watching films or reading books, we meet new examples of non-normative language or vocabulary. So I think it's the question of the further investigation.
Okay, thank you, Natalia. Thank you very much.
So you collected your examples from your personal experience. What is the age of the speakers using slang, well, and all the kinds of
The example.
That was
Yes, the example was about school children, actually. So you see the words that I presented. So I know that the corresponding word of chilka, so in English is teach, well-known example. So it also exists. So actually children aged 10, maybe 13 years old.
So do you believe that that's the universal thing, typical?
No, I mean that
at the age of certain age of people.
So actually, I think adolescents are the most the brightest example for us to study the vocabulary of this stage. I mean, if we speak about the age.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I think that people who you have to investigate, whose speech you have to investigate, should be a bit older than 10 years. 13 is okay. That is just the age when they invent different words which they use in their speech.
Yes, I think that was the example in the my presentation. So actually, if we speak about school language, but yes, for the teenagers, I think we should the age period of for investigation is better to use to start with 13, like teenagers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions, comments? Herman? No?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
Nataliia.
Ira.
Yes.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Andrushenko.
Thank you so much for your fantastic presentation, because slang was, and will be interesting. But my question will be very, very simple. Have you tried to trace at what age slang actually started to be used? It started to be used, actually. Just at what age? Is it about children in the kindergarten? I don't know, at the primary school? Or it's interesting to learn this.
Actually, I think it starts even in the kindergarten, because they follow the peers. So actually, and I think maybe elder brothers or sisters, so they have the influence, and of course they imitate them, and of course we should take into account the development, as I have already mentioned, technology and social media. So I think it's vital for them as well, and these words appear and in their colloquial expression.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nataliia? Yes, you're welcome. Nataliia.
Nataliia, thank you for this very interesting research. I sometimes find myself unable to understand what my daughter says. At times she is 13. So my question is, what about the probably proportion of this international elements? I mean, in our world of globalization, yes, speaking of teenage slang, so to say, with all those, I don't know, American and Asian influences, or if this teenage slang is strictly, I don't know, national, so to say, or a powerful tool for, very culture specific.
I think it's it depends on the okay, I think if you speak about purely English words, so it may be like cross-cultural, and if we take into account like so the spread of the like trends, or maybe even fashion, if you take into account fashion sphere. So I think new words appear due to the particular particular things in this sphere.
Thank you.
What occurred to me, it would be interesting to trace your slang, if you remember yourself at the age of 13, with your children's slang, how language reflects the changes in the surrounding world and the society as we've been speaking today. Okay, looking at the time, it's time to proceed to our session discussions. There'll be more people to join us, but the link is different. The chair of the session is Irina Andrushenko. Would you please share in the chat the link so we can kind of move into another room for the discussion? And we will be joined by Dinesh Kumar, Assistant Professor of English from India. And we'll have more kind of practical issues to discuss. That is, again, how phonetic phenomena influence our daily communication and how it is reflected in teaching English. At this moment, I want to thank everybody for this inspiring discussion and like 2 minutes break and moving into further communication. Okay. So can everybody see the link?
Yep.
So
it's given in the program. It's given in the program. That's why
yeah,
I
so
guess there be any problems.
moving yes,
that's
to another room for the discussion. Thank you. See you soon.
Okay, thank you, Larissa, for such a nice plenary meeting. Very useful. Thank you very much.